Gonna try and bleed my hydraulic lash adjusters. So I got the bottom of a pop bottle here filled halfway with kerosene, and I got my lash adjuster. I'm gonna drop in the kerosene, and some bubbles are gonna come out of there. Then I got a piece of rebar wire that I'm gonna be able to push the ball down at the bottom of the lash adjuster with, and that's going to let me bleed this the rest of the way. Unfortunately, these gloves aren't going to work with this kerosene. So I think I just keep pushing this down until it quits bubbling, and it should clean it out a bit as well. See, the kerosene's getting a little bit murky. I don't know how well you can see this, but essentially I just got my little wire and I'm just plugging her down there, getting all the air out of it. And then it's once you have all the air out and it's good, you just make sure you can't push it down with your fingers without that rod in there, and keep it upright. Keep the kerosene in it until it's ready to be installed. Thought I'd show you how I'm keeping these guys upright in the meantime. I just cut some slits into the lid of a plastic container and just stuck them in there. I might bleed them once again right before I put them in just to make sure, but cleaning them out right now anyhow. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is check the service limits and tolerances of all the parts in the engine. Since my measuring equipment, my calipers and micrometers are in inches, I made a spreadsheet of all the service tolerances in the manual, and just converted all the metric units into imperial so I can use my caliper and my micrometer to measure this stuff properly. And first I'm going to start with the camshafts, and the first thing to measure is the camshaft height. So the first thing I'm going to measure is the inlet cam from my front head, and the measurement for that should be between 33.45 and 33.558 millimeters with a service limit of 33.35 millimeters. Now, to convert that in inches so I can use my imperial micrometer, the low end is 1.3169 and the high is 1.3213 with a service limit of 1.313. So just line my micrometer up the highest point of the cam, turn it on until it clicks, and then I'll take that measurement, and I have 1.318 5, and that is between 1.3169 and 1.3212, so that is okay. And then I'll just keep doing that for the rest of the cam heights. Okay, so I got my exhaust cam from the front cylinder now, and I know it's the exhaust one, or exhaust side, because it's the shorter one, and the conversion for the service limits for this one is 1.3047 inches on the low end and 1.3089 inches on the high end. Okay, so on my exhaust cam, this one was 1.3049, so it was just above the low end, and this one was just a little bit below the low end but higher than the service limit. so I'll still use this cam. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to check is the camshaft bearing clearance. And for that, you need a product called plastic gauge, and it comes in a little thing like this, and you just tear off a little strip, the width of the bearing, and you place that right on the top of the bearing, as square as you can get with the shaft, I guess, or in line with the shaft. And I'm going to put a piece on all four bearings, and then I'm going to put the cap on top and torque it down to spec, and however much this little piece squishes, I just measure with this little gauge that comes on the packaging, and whichever one it corresponds to, that's how much clearance I have on those bearings. So I have all four strips and all four bearings. The only thing you want to be sure of is that the strips cover the entire width of the bearings, edge to edge. Now I'll put that cap on. I'm going to torque these down in the following order to 104 inch-pounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I got all those bolts popped out of there. I'm going to pull this cover off with the camshafts and check what we got on this plastic gauge. So I'm just gonna line it up with the squish with the corresponding thickness on this little piece of gauge that came with it, and see where we're at. This one looks really close to the 0.076 mark, as does this one. This one might be a little bit wider than that, so a little tighter than 0.076, and same with this one. And the clearance I was shooting for was between 0.020 millimeters and 0.062 millimeters, with a service limit of 0.15 millimeters. So I'm definitely under the 0.15. That's the widest. Yeah. So I think I'm good. And show this a little better. You can see the squish patterns that were left by the plastic gauge, and the little marks on this piece. Now 0.152 is the smallest, thinnest mark, and that's about what my service limit is. And all my marks are closer to the 0.076, which is the second biggest squish on this gauge, and that's close to what they all are. So they're definitely within the service limits, and they look like, with the exception of maybe these two, they're all within the standard range. Just gonna wipe the plastic gauge off with a little bit of carb cleaner and a rag here.